How are you guys doing today? It's a lovely day to be alive. We are going to talk about family systems theory today, and I'm going to start out by talking about the history of it to give you a little background on it. So, here we go. History of family systems theory. It was believed to be developed in the 1960s. This is when it was known, and it was more than likely when they started using this theory. Like, this is the time that they started using it in therapy and whatnot. Ernest Burgess was the one who introduced it in 1962. He made a presentation, actually, and showed it to the American Sociology Association. And he said it was that a family is a unity of interacting personalities, meaning that the family is considered a whole and lives and grows as one like super personality. He said that meant that a family is much more than its formal or legal definition. Right, and that he also said there are two basic family types. One being highly integrated, meaning it's characterized by rituals, discipline, and interdependence, and the other one being unintegrated. The other family type being unintegrated, which is the lack of those features. A family needs to be integrated on some level so that they have some form of rules, because otherwise it would just, be pretty chaotic. It wouldn't be very integrated. It emerged from general systems theory, which I think is kind of cool because they had general systems theory at one point, and as it got more complex and time went on, and there was more studying going on with it, they eventually got family systems theory, and it also led to the growth of family therapy by finding this new theory, this family systems theory. Now, next, I'm going to talk about what is family systems theory, which was very fun to learn about personally. It is the relationships that make up a system. And what I mean by that is the theory focuses on relationships that make up the systems, like how spouses, family members, children, parents, how they all mutually influence each other and communicate with one another. Is that's what they focus on, is like the relationships, not the one person, what they do. It is also considered a unit of interdependent individuals, which means you look at the relationships that make up this system rather than the system as a whole. Like, this is this. Like, you look at each thing in the system instead of saying the system is this. You look at each person's relationships and you say it can be examined on their own in relation to the larger unit. All right. And it has subsystems. And some systems are basically units within the family that you can look at, you can examine on their own as relation to the larger unit, like what role they play. There's the parent-child subsystem, a siblings subsystem, the aunt-nephew subsystem, and grandparent-grandchild subsystem. They're basically relationships that each is set with one another. Like when, like a father would more likely give his son his gun that he does not use anymore than he would give to his daughter, because that's like their sub relationship they have. Or like maybe an uncle would give it to his nephew rather than giving it to his niece. It's the relationship they have. All right. And the next thing that I wanted to talk about are basic assumptions on this theory, because with any theory there are pros and cons, I guess you could say, and I mean it is a theory. So the theory says that the whole is greater than the sum of parts, which is which means the whole is of the system of the family is greater than each individual um, part. When you help a person in a system, there are elements in that system that can affect the person as well. Right? And locus of pathology / problems is not within the person, but it is a system dysfunction. I was really excited to learn about this because I can see this in people. I see how a person, like if I'm walking down the street and I see someone who's got like messy hair or just really like gross or ugly clothing, like something not really presentable, I wonder why that person is that way and why they dress like that, but I wonder what they've been through in their life to end up like that, rather than like judging them for how they look. I would wonder what got them to that point to where they don't care what their hair looks like and they don't care what their clothes look like. Like, what events have they been in through their life to be okay with walking down the street and looking like that? Like, I couldn't do that. And the next thing is rules result from redundancy principles and are critical in redefining a family. Rules come about mainly because things happen within a family. So they come up with a rule to handle that situation when it comes up, or the rule will now like prevent that certain thing from happening again. I think rules are important because without rules, things would be out of whack. It wouldn't have any order. You could basically do what you want. Like if you were a child and your parents didn't give you rules, you were like 17 or something, you can just leave at 2 a.m. and go hang out with your friends or go do something really irresponsible and maybe even get hurt. In a family that has rules, the rules would be, no leaving in the middle of the night with your friends to do irresponsible things, because that would lead to an accident or something. So we have these rules that don't let that happen. Let's see. All right. The next assumption. Let's see. Feedback loops guide behavior. So if you are giving positive feedback, it will guide the behavior in that way, in a positive way. If you're getting negative feedback, it'll give that back. So feedback is important, especially within a family. There's to have feedback to know like how one another feels really, and how someone reacts to whatever situation. You'll see that if they react negatively, you obviously know that they're upset or they need to be talked to or whatever the case may be. And if they have positive feedback, then they're doing all right. They don't have anything like underlying bothering them. And the next assumption is pathological communication. It contributes to relationship problems. If someone, which this pretty much means if someone's in the relationship has issues in their head, then they will be causing problems in a relationship. I'm sure a few of us have met or dated someone who's not exactly, all the way there. They get upset about things that you probably wouldn't get upset about, or they have such an issue in their head, like they're kind of messed up to where they think something is okay and it's not okay, or they have no limits. They'll cross lines that are supposed to be understood. It seems like a lot of people have this issue. I've dated a few myself. Family types are based on their rigidity of family boundaries. So this is like when each family member plays some kind of role in the family, whether it be like the mom works and the kids are responsible for like cleaning up around the house and cleaning their bathrooms, or it could be the mom does the cleaning and everything else and the cooking while the dad goes to work, or any situations like that. All right, and now I'm going to talk about our terms and concepts, which is important to know so that you can better understand the theory and what theories are talking about. You know these definitions. All right. The first one is systems. And systems are objects that relate to one another in a way and have their own attributes that make up a whole, like a complex whole. Meaning, like, I found this one hard to explain because, like, how do you explain a system? Like, a system is a system. But it's objects that relate to one another in a way, and they have their own attributes that make up that complex system. It makes, a bunch of different things into one spot. It's a system that works together. It's going good. Boundaries. I describe this as like invisible lines that distinguish like family limits. The family maintains their boundaries by, not allowing certain things to go on in their lives or their homes. Like such as they would steer away from negative or hostile people because those people would cross those, invisible boundaries, or with their negativity and hostileness. They're not someone you would really want to bring into your circle of peace. Those are the type of people that'll cross boundaries. They don't respect them, and boundaries are not meant to be crossed. That's why they are boundaries. They're invisible lines that distinguish limits. Hierarchy is a system of organization in which people or groups are ranked one above the other according to status or authority, which this hierarchy can be explained in like different situations, like hierarchy of the family. Like obviously like in my family, my sister was older. There's 3 sisters: Amy, Emily, and me. And Amy would always, since she was the oldest, she always got front seat whenever we went somewhere, just because she was the oldest. That was the rule. She was the babysitter if my parents ever went out of town. She always had the authority over us, especially if we were like out anywhere, and like say we went to the grocery store and we're on one aisle with my sister and then my mom was on a different aisle. She would pretty much be responsible for us at that point, just because like that's understood in our hierarchy. All right, and next is family rules. This one is pretty self-explanatory. These are rules that the family set for themselves, so there will be order in the family, like kind of like a guideline that they follow and set for themselves. So these again are very important, or else it'll be a madhouse in your house without any family rules. Next is feedback. Feedback is a response a family member makes to one another, or one to another. It can be either positive or negative response. The best to have a balance between positive and negative feedback loops, because it allows innovation and change, and negative feedback loops suppress altercation, and as too much change could become unstable or chaotic. So that's pretty self-explanatory too. You need a little bit of both. And nothing's perfect. We are humans. We are not perfect. We could not be if we tried. So a little bit of negative feedback always is good. It's good to know like where someone is at too in the family, how they feel. All right. Equilibrium is a balance that a family tries to keep. If something within the family is thrown off somehow, someone may, like because of how someone acted, or if there was a situation that the family was brought into where it affects everyone in the family in a negative way, they have to get back in balance. So I guess like an example would be if someone in the family, like say you got a few brothers and sisters, say one of them passed away, that would be, and your family was fine before, like this is something that pops up that would mess up the equilibrium, like within the family, or if one of your siblings gets in really bad trouble by doing something they should not have been doing, it could also mess up the equilibrium in your family by the tension and having to deal with one parent being mad at the child and all, like instead of how it was before. It was just kind of neutral, or it was good, like nobody was mad at anybody. And the next one, identified patient. This is an individual who carries the most of the family's burdens, and it's often gets seen as the cause of the family's problems, but that's not exactly how it would be. So you could have, you could have a family of 5 that has its own, financial issues or its own trust issues, whatever it is, but one of the children could be carrying the burden of all of that the most. They could be trying to, talk to mom, make sure she's doing all right, and talk to dad, make sure he's doing all right. And if them two, or if mom and dad are having conflict, the child is the one who has to pretend like everything's okay and talk to one another, talk to each parent, whatever they have to do. Circular casualty. This is the mutual interactions of causes and consequences. So basically, if there's an effect on A that ends up affecting B, then B turns around and affects A, and so A turns around and affects B, and so on and so forth. An example of that, you could say when a father drinks, and that influences his son to pick up the drinking habit, and the dad gets on or yells to the son for his drinking, and so the son reacts by drinking even more, or just continuing to drink and then drinking out of spite at this point, or any situation similar to that. And double bind. I'm sure some of us have been in these. They're not fun. They kind of mess with your head a little bit. It's when a person is given 2 commands that contradict one another, and if you obey one of these rules, or one of these things you're being told, and neglect the other one, you will be getting in trouble, which is pretty much always going to be the case in a double bind. Like there's 2 things that contradict each other, so if you do one, you can't really do the other. So that would cause my conflict there. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The next one, family flexibility. This is the family's adaptability to new stress or stress in situations, and it's how well or not well they handle the new situation or stress situation. So how your family would deal with, I guess, a death of a sibling, how they they either could just be really strong and continue with their lives and do the best they can to not let it affect them and make them overwhelmingly depressed every single day, which of course they would be sad, but to let it get out of hand, obviously, it would show that the family's flexibility isn't that great. They would pretty much bend and then break, versus like if a sibling dies and the family pretty much loses it. They don't have any control. They stop going to work. They don't answer phone calls. They pick up drinking or a drug habit. Like that would show that the flexibility of that family wasn't very good. All right, and this one is mutuality. It's found in open families that love and accept you for who you are. And I would say that my family has this. They love me just the way I am, and they accept me for who I am and the things that I like to do. If I like to cook, my stepdad would be right there cheering me on to cook. If I wanted to dirt bike race, he would be cheering me on to dirt bike race. Whatever makes me happy makes him happy. And that's a good example for mutuality. And I feel the same for him. All right, and this last one is family cohesion, and it's the degree of closeness or emotional bonding that the family members have with one another, which, some have a lot and some don't have that much at all. I know I've had friends growing up whose families were like very, very close. They did lots of things together. They had movie nights, they had game nights, they made sure they, ate dinner together almost every night. They were really, really close. They always made jokes. They always went on vacations. And then I would look at like my family at the time, and it was not like that at all. Like my dad ate in his room, and we never had a family game night in our lives. So we weren't very close. My sister was never home. It was just me, and I would eat in my room. So we didn't have much of that. But I got a good example for family cohesion I would love to share.
My grandpa, who showed me these moose.
Oh, that is so sweet. Is he here? Where's your grandpa right now?
In the trunk of our car.
Okay. Well, take it away, Olive.
That shows how I have a little problem with PowerPoint. That shows how close that family is, and the rest of the clip, which I could not get, but they end up getting on stage with her and dancing, and to me that shows how close they really are, just to get up on stage and dance with her. Like, my family would not do that. I love that video. That movie, actually. Alright. Technology. Alright. And next slides is, I made a slide for this. This is the application of the theory. So, like, one part is circular causality, which, excuse me, I'm sorry. When parents constantly are calling, this is an example, when a parent is constantly calling and asking to come visit their daughter, but the daughter is always saying, like, you're too pushy and you ask too much. Parents say that they wouldn't call so much and ask to visit their daughter so much if the daughter would just invite them first, or at least more often, not like once every 6 months, The daughter says that she would call and invite them, though, if they wouldn't call and ask to come over so much. That could be overbearing. So they're in like this circular causality of mom wants to come over and bothers the daughter. Daughter would let her come over if she didn't bother her so much to come over, and so it's like it just goes in this constant circle. All right, and I'm also going to talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of this theory. So some strengths, one of them is that it is non-linear. This theory is non-linear, meaning it's got multiple outcomes and paths. Rather than coming to like an average ending, it can be different and depending on the family type or like what the family situation is. It's not always going to be the same outcome, and it's not just for one type of family. This works for everyone. All right. The next strength is that it's practical. It's really easy to apply to everyday life, and it's easily translated to make sense to like an average person, so that they can understand like what's going on and how the theory is being applied to their family. And another one is it's most useful in family therapy, which is great. it's done good for the family therapy world. A weakness for this theory is it qualifies as not a true theory, because the way the theory works, they say it's more like a flow chart for like easier understanding. Like basically, you just like put whatever situation the family's in into this box and this box, and you just go with it rather than like actually getting depth of what is going on. You're just kind of putting it in a box and going. Another weakness is that it's too general, which means it doesn't account for all the different distinctions there are, like within a family or whatever. So it just generalizes rather than not generalizing. It's more of a different thing there. And the last weakness is it's often taken as concrete, which I guess this would be a problem with most theories, considering it is a theory, and it shouldn't be taken as straight fact. It shouldn't be like this is one way. Like this is just a theory that has helped people, although it's just a theory. It's something that does help. All right. And last thing I'm going to talk about is the comparison of the family systems theory to structural functionalism theory. Structural functionalism plays a part in family systems theory. It looks at the family relationships, behaviors, and the patterns. That's what structural functionalism does. And that's, in the long run, what family systems theory is always looking at the relationships to see how that goes. And they also have subsystems within that theory. So that's another similarity that they share. And my last slide is my reference page, which this is one of the websites I went to get one of my things that I put in this PowerPoint. Well, I hope that I could help and maybe taught somebody something. It was certainly interesting to learn myself. So, have a good day.